Hello and welcome to New Jersey Politics with Laura Jones. I am Laura Jones and it is good to have you here. Today we are all about the midterm elections and we have reaction and analysis for you. Former Assemblyman and gubernatorial candidate John Wisniewski is standing by with his insight on how the Democrats did. There was not the red wave that many were expecting, but there were some key victories by Republicans. So what does that mean for the Democrats? We're going to discuss that. First up, in New Jersey, Republican Tom Kean Jr. beat out the incumbent Tom Malinowski in the 7th Congressional District. That was a race closely watched here in New Jersey and across the country. So let's get to it. Joining me now is David Wildstein, the editor of the New Jersey Globe. David, thank you for coming in. Not a lot of people went to sleep on election night, so we're glad to see you.
Oh, happy to be here. Thank you.
All right, well, let's just talk a little bit about your initial reactions to how the midterms played out. Any big surprises that you saw?
Yeah, the surprise is that the red wave never came. It just never showed up. Everybody was waiting for it, and it didn't happen. Races that I thought were going to be close at the congressional level, and especially at the county level in New Jersey, they turned out not to be close, and there weren't as many surprises as I thought there would be.
What do you attribute that to? Is this, are polls getting it wrong? Are the campaigns not being as aggressive as they could be? Or, you know, like you said, it's normal in a midterm for the party in power to lose seats, so you expect, because the Democrats are in control, that Republicans would make more gains. What's going on?
Well, you know, I think the polls are a good point because the polls are only as good as the model that they're based off of. A poll is just it's a snapshot in time and it reflects a turnout model. And if they get the turnout model wrong, then the poll is no good. And I heard from a bunch of campaigns that that's been a problem. So for example, we thought Andy Kim was suddenly in a tough race. And I had heard about polling, you know, Kim went from 9 points up to 4 points up to within the margin of error. And then all of a sudden he blew the doors off. It was a double-digit win. And it was an impressive win, which means he wasn't in trouble. You know, Mikey Sherrill, people were getting nervous. She spent $7 million. She also did exceptionally well. So she had to overspend a little bit in order to get that money, in order to get those numbers.
Yeah. Well, what about the 7th Congressional District? That is occupied currently by Democrat Tom Malinowski, and Tom Kean Jr. Is pretty, you know, it's not as razor thin as they thought it would be, and, you know, Tom Kean coming out on top on that.
No, it's pretty comfortable. And, you know, I think the big takeaway for me there is this is the map that was drawn. This was a Democratic map. They gave up one seat, Malinowski, in order to shore up 3 other incumbents. And that's exactly what happened. The map turned out to be perfectly modeled as to what their goals were. Malinowski has lost, and the other 3 incumbents won by double digits.
Yeah. So, you know, let me ask you about Tom Kean transitioning into Washington, D.C. Like, you know him, I know him. He is somebody who is relatively well liked in the legislature, where he served so many years. Obviously, his father very well liked, and you've got a Kean poster behind you.
That's actually Tom Kean Jr.'s great grandfather when he ran for the U.S. Senate. So.
Right there, yeah. What do you think? How do you think he's going to transition to Washington, D.C. In this day and age where things are so polarized? If you know him, he's not a particularly polarizing person. He is a person who understands compromise. Yet in this day and age, I think both sides are being painted as very extreme. What are your thoughts just on him making that transition into Washington, D.C. and being able to, you know, to make that transition in a very hostile environment?
It's a great question because I've thought about that a lot. What will it be like for a guy who, you know, and one thing to remember about Tom Kean Jr. is he really is a little bit more conservative than his father, but he's not as conservative as a lot of the Republicans who serve in Congress. So he's going to have to make some adjustments there. I think it all depends on, once this all settles out, how how, whether it's a Republican majority or minority, by how many votes it is. If it's a tight, there's nothing out there that indicates it's going to be 20, 30, 40 seats like had been predicted in some bad polls. If it's a little closer, Kane's got the ability to be incredibly influential because he can forge a relationship with some other right of center, Northeasterners. Mike Lawler, who looks like he's winning in New York. I mean, the guy pulls out of his driveway and he's over the New Jersey state line in 4 minutes. He's practically Jersey's 13th congressman. He too would fit that ideology. Chris Smith is in that kind of a position. There's looks like a bunch of flip seats in New York. So suddenly you're going to have a greater number of Northeastern Republicans that are not, they're not modeled after, Alabama or Mississippi or Louisiana, and they're going to have to, I think a majority caucus is going to have to deal with that. And Kane has an opportunity to get a lot for New Jersey if he plays that right.
Yeah. Going back to the Democrats and election night and how they were able to really outperform that historical trend, is this about their get out the vote effort? Were there issues that were really driving people to come out and vote that may have surprised people?
Well, first of all, and I think it's going to take a while. Vote by mail ballots have till Monday to come in. Monday close of business. We haven't delved into these numbers yet in terms of vote by mail, early voting, and then machine voting. Republicans were winning a lot of these contests on election day, but Democrats have done a great job banking votes in advance, where they're really laser focused on turning their people out, and I think that's one of the things that saved them. The other thing, and I've been thinking about this since I started to see these results. What we saw last year in the gubernatorial race was a real backlash. It seems to me that maybe some people in New Jersey were a little, because of COVID, a little angrier at Phil Murphy, over whether it was vaccines or mask mandates or business closures, maybe a little bit more angry last year at Phil Murphy than they are this year at Joe Biden. And I think that might be a change.
Well, that is an interesting point, because New Jersey state elections run on the odd years, which, before you know it, if not already, those campaigns for 2023 are kicking off, and our nationals are held on the odd year. So how does that too, on those odd years, which we're going to be coming up to 2023, not going to have a gubernatorial, but we will have those legislative. Are people going to be angry enough to still, or upset to still drive them to the polls?
Yeah, I wish I knew, because when you predict something this early, at least when I do it, when I predict something a year out, I'm reliably wrong. But that being said,
right, a week can be a lifetime in politics.
Yeah, it really can. It really can. But one of the things that I'm looking at is what is going to be the context of next year's election. I remember 1994. It was the Bill Clinton midterms, and Democrats got wiped out. And what happened is then you got Newt Gingrich as the speaker, and he gave Democrats a boogeyman to make as their target. And all of a sudden, by 1995, in New Jersey, in legislative races, it was a decent year for Democrats, because suddenly Bill Clinton readjusted his administration. He fixed some of the things. The message of the midterms was received. He suddenly had Newt Gingrich talking about cutting Social Security, and things started to readjust back. And the other thing, and I think this is hugely important to think about as you look at 23, number one, it's the first year under the new map, the new redistricting map, which is more competitive. The other thing that sort of fascinates me is that New Jersey elections will be run under the backdrop of a Republican presidential primary. They're going to be voting in the early states, New Hampshire and whatever other states they pick. They're going to be in the midst of that campaign when New Jersey goes to the polls. And there's no way around the fact that a bitter Republican primary, Donald Trump against Ron DeSantis or something like that, that can't trickle down and affect how people vote in New Jersey.
Yeah. Just one final thought on topic of Republicans. Who do you think then will become the party leader in New Jersey? Will Jack Ciattarelli be back? Will Tom Kean, even though he's a incoming freshman a member of Congress, he has that name. He has that name recognition. Will he be someone to reckon with also here in New Jersey, or somebody else?
I don't get the impression that Tom Kean wants to be that person. I think he wants to be a congressman. I think he wants to focus on his district and not play a statewide role. Absolutely, Jack Ciattarelli, for the time being, he's still the standard bearer until the Republicans nominate another statewide candidate. And you're going to see the early days of the 2025 gubernatorial primary begin sooner rather than later.
Any other final thoughts on this election? Anything that surprised you? Takeaway? Something you're going to be thinking about for a while?
Yeah, I'm going to be thinking. I'm going to be thinking about where was this wave, and I'm going to be thinking about all this talk about Gloucester County and the tragic death of a dog and everything about that part of the state seemed to be trending Republican, and then all of a sudden it didn't. Democrats held it. So the effect on the local level, maybe Laura, this is about the fact that this is the year where there was no top of the ticket. You had congressional candidates at the top. It happens every 12 years in a federal election where there's no president or there's no U.S. senator running. And maybe that's part of it. Maybe there's just no coattails from the top. There's no one person that everybody's coming out and voting for.
All right. David Waldstein, thank you so much for coming and talking to us about the election and midterms. Thank you.
Thank you. Always a pleasure. Thanks.
Joining us now is former state legislator and gubernatorial candidate John Wisniewski. It's good to see you here.
Good to see you. It was a late night, and so we're all tired this morning.
For sure. So what were you most closely watching, and just kind of your reaction to how the midterms are playing out?
So all politics is local. I was looking at the New Jersey races. The big race in New Jersey was the Tom Malinowski, Tom Kean race in 7. I don't think that was a surprise. We were all hoping that Malinowski would pull it out, but at the end, redistricting did him no favors. To make Mikey Sherrill's district safer, they took Democratic votes away from Malinowski's district, which cost him the election. That, plus that unfortunate stock trading issue that came up midway through the election. I think both of those things worked against him and cost Democrats that seat in this cycle.
Yeah, but normally the incumbent party, which is the Democratic Party, they usually suffer pretty big losses in the midterms, but that wasn't the case when you look at the big picture. So why do you think the party is able to buck that trend, so to speak?
Well, the real question is was the party able to buck the trend, the Democratic Party, or did the Republicans overplay their hand? And I think that this is a case of a combination of the two. The Democrats put up strong candidates. When you look nationally, let's take New Jersey out of the picture. When you look nationally, John Fetterman in Pennsylvania, the former mayor of Braddock, the current lieutenant governor, somebody who has got lots of credibility within the state, versus the doctor from Bergen County, New Jersey. That was a real good choice for Democrats. They played that hand very well. I also think that in that state, I don't know what Dr. Oz was thinking in the final days of an election in which Donald Trump is such a polarizing character. To do a campaign spin with Donald Trump, I think alienated voters. And if you wanted to write a national narrative about this, is that voters came out and rejected extremism. They rejected MAGA Republicans. They wanted to bring this back to the center, and that benefited Democrats.
Yeah, well, and we talked about this on election night. There are a lot of Republicans who recognize the extreme sides, and same on the Democratic side. But then you have a lot of Republicans saying the Democrats are too extreme, and a lot of Democrats who are saying, well, the Republicans are too extreme. While the really extreme voices on both sides seem to have the microphone a lot of the time, do you really think that that's the way most Americans really feel? I mean, people want to just go about their business. They don't want to be in this negativity, but those two extremes have the microphone. And if you identify as a Republican or a Democrat, then you get painted with that brush. And then you have people just saying, I don't want to be a part of any of it. And then they become disenfranchised.
Right. So separate out the hardcore adherents of either party, right? The blue dog Democrats, the dyed-in-the-wool Republicans. I mean, they're going to vote party no matter what. But there's a vast middle, and the vast middle is what usually governs elections nationally. And that vast middle has, for a long time, said a pox on both your houses. I'm tired about hearing about extreme positions, whether they be Democrat or Republican. But I think one of the things that really stood out, there were a lot of things that could have lifted Republican sales, gasoline prices being very high, inflation being very high, a president in the Democratic Party who is underwater from a polling perspective in the mid 40s or low 40s. Those are things that all should work in the Republican favor. In the Democratic Party, there are Congress people, even some people on a state level, who have robustly called for defunding of the police. And Republicans have gleefully seized upon that and tried to paint the party unilaterally as a party that wants to have mayhem and carnage in the streets and do not want local police officers. But within the Democratic Party, there have been robust voices who have said, wait, that's not what we want to do. Yes, there are people, we have a big tent, we have a lot of people in our party, and some of them want to do that, but that's not what the majority of us want to do. Now flip that narrative to the Republican side, where Paul Pelosi gets attacked in his home. He's hospitalized with a fractured skull. And there are Republicans gleefully talking about it, casting shade that there was some sinister, nefarious reasons that this happened. And there are no voices on the Republican side saying, wait a minute, this is just a bridge too far. We can't be talking about this, person who's not involved in electoral politics. He doesn't put his name on the ballot. He's the spouse of the Speaker of the House. He should not be attacked. Nobody should be attacked in their home. There's nobody saying that on the Republican side. And
or if they are, it's not getting the media coverage.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So moving on to. And again, the results are fluid. We'll be going well into November before we know a full count. But Republicans look as if they are going to have control of the House. So what do you expect the lame duck season to look like, and also the legislative agenda as Republicans are poised to take control?
Well, this is the opportunity, frankly, where there might be a seed of bipartisanship that is born of necessity. Let's suppose Kevin McCarthy seizes the Speaker's gavel and he has what some people predict to be a 5 or 8 vote majority. That majority is going to be made up of MAGA Republicans and middle of the road Republicans. And for his speakership to be successful, he's going to need to be able to get things done. And he can't get anything done because it looks pretty clear the Democrats are going to control the Senate. And so is there an opportunity here to talk to some of those middle of the road Republicans and suggest to them that, you can do better working with the Democratic minority to get things done than you can with the crazies and the MAGA Republicans? That certainly is one possible scenario that we all ought to hope for, so that we can bring some sanity back, because we don't want to see the government shut down because the MAGA Republicans want to, have the U.S. government default on its debt. We don't want to see the United States walk away from its commitment to allies like Ukraine, But that's what MAGA Republicans are talking about. And there's an opportunity here to short circuit that with saner, cooler heads in the House Republican caucus who are in the middle of the road.
Well, and because there wasn't that huge red wave like many were expecting, and we can talk about polls and how polls got certain things wrong, how do the Democrats build upon that? Right? They didn't lose as much as they thought they. How do they build on that going into 2024? Because you and I both know, game on. We're going to be talking about the next presidential, even though we have another election in 2023 here in New Jersey, legislative. But the spotlight's going to be on 2024.
No grass grows under any political pundit or candidate's feet in the United States or in New Jersey. There's always the next election. First of all, it's important for Democrats to understand what happened here, and let's not let it go to our head. The historical trend was against the Democratic Party. The Republicans were, full of gin, thinking about this was going to be a huge red tidal wave. It was not. Who gets credit for that? Joe Biden. Joe Biden is the leader who brought the Democrats across the finish line, who with his policies gave Democrats something to talk about. And we need to recognize that that leadership is going to be what helps us move forward. But beyond that, we have to recognize that the Democratic Party cannot talk to the voters it hopes or it wishes it was talking to. We're going to have to recognize as a party that there are voters out there who do not agree with the party, and we need to figure out a way to bring them over to see things our way, to support what they want so that we can increase those majorities, because we cannot continue to have elections being decided, on a razor's thin margin every year. We need to increase that center of the road majority so that Democrats can do better each and every year.
People are passionate about their teams. I'm a Republican team, I'm a Democrat, you identify, and you may not agree with a lot of what is being talked about, or again, the more extreme sides of either parties. But people are very loyal to their teams, and that's where average people get into a lot of fights, and they argue, and then they alienate each other as opposed to focusing on what they really agree upon. So what are your thoughts on that?
Well, look, I said earlier, there are the blue dog Democrats and there are dyed-in-wool Republicans, and they're always going to be the folks that are worried about their team. In Georgia, it seemed to go beyond that. I mean, there really wasn't a big middle ground. There were people, when you looked at some of the polling data, some of the interviews, people were saying, look, I think Herschel Walker is the worst possible candidate to run for U.S. Senate, but he's a Republican and he'll give us control of the U.S. Senate so that we can appoint judges. That's really convoluted thinking, because it's not just simply about having somebody who can sit in a chair and vote for conservative judges like Brett Kavanaugh, notwithstanding the fact that they can do nothing else. It's about having people who are going to add to the discussion, and Herschel Walker was uniquely unqualified to add to the discussion, other than some of the salacious issues that came up during his campaign.
Yeah, but even whether you agree or disagree about anybody's qualifications, ultimately the voters get to vote and get their say, and that a libertarian candidate really did, because in Georgia you need more than 50%. That libertarian got a lot of votes. People just frustrated, perhaps, with both sides.
Well, I think that there are people who hold their nose. I can't vote for either, so I'm going to vote for the libertarian. And what they are unfortunately doing is they're actually helping one side or the other, right? A vote that is not for Herschel Walker or for Raphael Warnock is a vote against one of them, in a way of speaking. So you look at that libertarian vote, that vote, if that candidate were not on the ballot, would have gone either to Walker or to Warnock. And in my opinion, because it's, Warnock is so close to having that 50%, if that candidate weren't there, this election would be over already. But now it may go to a runoff just simply because of a protest vote.
And, we'll have to have you back on another segment where we talk about these third parties because New Jersey's own Christy Whitman is part of the Forward Party, and we're going to be having her on other shows to talk about, what groups like this stand for, and are they truly the spoiler? But we're going to have to save that for another day, another segment. John, thank you so much for taking the time to talk to us.
Good to be with you once again.
This week, Governor Phil Murphy announced actions to combat car thefts across the state. New measures would impose harsher penalties for repeat offenders.
The efforts to grow the state police's auto theft task force, to give it greater ability to investigate and disrupt the car theft rings, which are at the heart of the current trend. The task force has been able to add new detectives, and under Attorney General Matt Platkin, the Division of Criminal Justice has added additional prosecutors to quickly bring perpetrators to justice. The Attorney General has also revised the police pursuit policy to explicitly permit the pursuit of stolen cars, among other things. We're also putting $10 million in federal funds to work in communities investing in automated license plate recognition technologies that allow local police to better track and trace both stolen vehicles and the vehicles being used to shuttle car thieves into targeted neighborhoods.
Earlier this year, the governor created an auto theft task force to help curb the problem. But according to state police, this year, nearly 14,000 cars have been stolen in New Jersey. And that will do it for today. I'm Laura Jones. Thanks so much for tuning in to New Jersey Politics. We look forward to seeing you back here next time.